I want to thank everyone for joining today's webinar, Modernize Network Services and Expand Hybrid Cloud Options, presented by Infoblox. I'm Kyle Welch here at SDX Central, and we're joined by our guest today, David Vineski, who is the Product Marketing Manager at Infoblox. Today's webinar, we'll be discussing a few different topics. At first, we'll discuss approaches to DDI security with improved password protections. We'll also talk about how to optimize resources and boost efficiencies through advanced VLAN management. And finally, we'll discuss ways to further fuel your hybrid cloud strategies. And with that, I'd like to pass the presentation over to David. And he's going to start the discussion around network services modernization and hybrid cloud strategies.
Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate the introduction. And more important, thank you to all the attendees. We know you're busy, and we really do appreciate you carving out a little bit of time in your day to hear our presentation. I'm also going to thank everybody on the line here for bearing with me. I live in the Pacific Northwest. Everything is blooming, and I am under allergy attack. So if I mute momentarily from time to time to clear my throat, that's what's going on. So just be forewarned. Now, if I effectively assume control of this presentation, I'll be able to advance. And we'll give it one more try. There we go. The agenda, it's relatively concise, but this is what we're going to talk about. First, just give everyone a very concise overview of Infoblox, if you're unfamiliar. If you are familiar, this will be review information. Then we'll talk a little bit about core network services, enterprise and enterprise-grade DDI, and this really is the essence of what's being modernized and what we'll be talking about further on. Then we'll talk a little about NIOS. I'll explain what that is if you're unfamiliar, and some of the advances that we've made in NIOS in our most recent release. And then at the end of the presentation, we've set aside time for questions and answers. As Kyle mentioned, please submit your questions through the little Q&A widget at the bottom of the screen. We will try to answer as many questions as we can in the time we have. And if we can't get to it, we will get back to you outside the bounds of this event with the answers to any open questions. Or at least that is our goal. So with that, let's just do a quick little introduction about Infoblox. So who are we, if you don't know? Infoblox is the leader in the DDI field. So let me just stop there. DDI, it's an abbreviation I'm going to use several times here. It stands for DNS, DHCP, and IP address management. So DNS, DHCP, and IP address management, we consider those core services. Right? Those are the services that are kind of hidden and running underneath virtually every network, and they make the network available. They make the applications and all the services on the available. So that's why they're core. If DDI doesn't work and it doesn't work well, the network doesn't work, and the implications to that are pretty obvious. We have over 8,500 customers of all stripe, enterprises, small to medium businesses, government agencies, educational institutions. And as it says here, about 70% of the Fortune 500 uses Infoblox to run their networks. By general acclamation and analyst reports, we have about 50% of the market for DDI. So our leadership is well-founded. And then NIOS. What is NIOS? NIOS is another abbreviation or acronym, if you will. It stands for Network Identity Operating System. It is, in fact, the software that powers all of our core network services. And it is the essence of this presentation. So I would like to do just a quick little poll of the audience. This helps me understand who we have out there and what your interest might be. And the question is simply, are you currently an Infoblox or NIOS customer? So if you're certain, answer yes. If you're certain you're not, answer no. And if you just don't know, that's fine too. Just check off unsure. So I'll give you a few seconds to do this quick poll, and I promise this is the only poll question. But just take a moment and then hit the submit button when you're done. And hopefully everyone's done. So we'll move along. So we can see here about 25% are users, a little better than half aren't. And those of you who are unsure, well, hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll be sure. But thank you for doing that. So now, just a quick talk about here. What is enterprise grade DDI? I told you what DDI was. DNS, DHCP, and IP address management. These are the core services that run a network. So what makes DDI enterprise grade DDI? First of all, it's the bundle of these services, all three services. There is DNS that runs standalone, the famous bind service invented a long time ago. Works, but it's one service. DHCP can be found almost anywhere. Microsoft Windows Server has that. It's been there for a while. IP address management is something else again. It runs in conjunction with these three services. But bundling them up as one brings three critical services together under, if you will, single pane of glass management. So that's part of what makes DDI enterprise grade. And another part is the flexibility to run it on different platforms. To be able to run it on a physical appliance, hardware, if that's the most appropriate, to run it on a virtual appliance. That is to say, a server running a hypervisor of your choice, be it Hyper-V or VMware or what have you, or within a cloud. And running enterprise grade DDI in a cloud is really another instantiation or derivation of a virtualized platform. But the takeaway here is that enterprise grade DDI should be able to run in any one of these platforms, or some combination of them. Second, what makes DDI enterprise grade is having a scalable and integrated database of all the data and information that DDI inherently collects. DDI, what is it doing? It's assigning IP addresses. It's assigning DNS records. It's recovering IP addresses. It's recovering DNS records, and it's keeping track of all that. That should be done in an organization of any size, and a database that can scale and be secure and be unified. And then the third point that makes enterprise grade DDI enterprise grade is simplicity. There's a lot going on here in this DDI. You do not want to have to do this with spreadsheets or, God forbid, paper or multiple systems. You want to do this in one place. Use scripts where you can. Use automation tools where you can, and integrate it with perhaps cloud orchestration tools where possible. These are the attributes that make enterprise grade DDI enterprise grade, to be redundant. So this is a logical, not a physical representation of enterprise grade DDI, at least as we see it. So these icons here, where you see Gridmaster and DDI and DDI and DDI, these might represent locations where you would have DDI running. Again, it could be on an appliance, could be virtualized in a server, but spread out over enterprise, over multiple locations. This might be a larger enterprise. And here they are interconnected with what we call the Infoblox grid. So I noted before, unified management. Right? This is how you might look at it. Unified management of the three services over a grid, over many locations. And you can see here, this will overlay perhaps a remote office, and you see these small icons down here. These might represent a standalone DHCP DNS service, perhaps running on Windows Server, as an example. What's important also is scalability and reliability. Generally, networks grow, networks change. So your DDI services have to grow, scale that is, and be reliable when they do. I mentioned the Infoblox grid. Infoblox grid is the means by which our services communicate with each other. They communicate securely, and they have the ability to fail over, that is, be resilient in case one of these platforms fails. Failures happen. And then finally, visibility into network activity. There are a lot of things going on. Again, the nature of DNS and DHCP is that they are assigning records. They are assigning IP addresses to devices, to services. Enterprise DDI can see a lot, and that information, that is what you get visibility to, can be very valuable in making a network function. So I'm not particularly big on bills, but I have a couple of bills for my slides here. And you notice here in Infoblox Enterprise Grade DDI, we have the ability to take a grid, all the information from the grid, in this case the grid master device, roll it over to into a warm recovery site that can be brought up just in case something fails, and we can enhance our services with reporting services that actually look at all this information. We have a reporting functionality that's got a built-in Splunk engine that uses the data, big data, if you will, to understand the trends of the network, as well as a service called NetMRI, which actually looks into the devices on the network, not just our platforms, but switches, routers, firewalls, load balancers, and helps understand their network activity. So if that is enterprise grade DDI at a very, very high level, why do people want it? What's driving the need? Well, there are four, and these are not in any particular order, other than the order that came to mind. But these are the things that are top of mind, or business drivers for enterprise grade DDI. One is network attacks, security. There are many attack surfaces in a network, too many, and unfortunately they're growing and changing. DNS has become a popular attack surface. So a DNS service that is inherently secure, which is an inherent attribute of enterprise grade DDI, becomes a necessity. Everyone's favorite, availability. Excuse me. Networks are no longer optional. Organizations depend on their networks. Availability and reliability of the network means the business can keep running. So enterprise grade DDI helps ensure that. Automating deployments. As the world has gone to virtualization and cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud, what have you, compute resources and storage resources, the provisioning and deprovisioning of those has been automated for quite some time. So should the network. So should network resources. They should equally be automated. It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be able to bring a compute resource, a server, storage, what have you, online quickly or take it offline quickly if the network cannot follow as quickly. If it's up but not connected, then it really isn't up. So being able to automate your DDI services kind of delivers or pays off on the efficiency of cloud. And speaking of cloud, since I brought it up, cloud adoption. This is not a future trend anymore. This has happened. Private cloud is a reality. Hybrid cloud is a reality, and hybrid cloud moving to public cloud, even to multi-cloud, that's a reality too. There are different projections as to how quickly this is happening, but the only difference in these projections is how fast. It's really not an if question, it's a when question. But no matter what cloud you're using, private, hybrid, public, multi, the network has to follow. You do not want to have, an organization does not want to be managing one network for its public cloud and another network for its private cloud, and have different DNS and DHCP and IP address management services for each cloud. it is simply inefficient. And you cannot have consistent policies that way. So let's dive a little bit deeper now into cloud, since that was one of the main topics of this webinar. What does enterprise-grade DDI for cloud mean? Well, really, it's enterprise-grade DDI, as I described it, plus integration with the actual cloud network. Clouds come with their own networks, especially public clouds. So the services, the core services must go there too. It should also support multi-cloud architecture. What's that mean? Multi-cloud architecture is the most recent next trend. And what we're finding and how the industry defines this really is an organization does not want to be stuck using one cloud provider for its offsite services. So in a world where you might have used AWS or Azure or Google or some other cloud provider, multi-cloud architecture means you might be using Azure and AWS and Google Cloud. And there are good reasons to do this, both technical as well as commercial reasons to do this. So enterprise-grade DDI for cloud needs to go there. Open APIs. Number 3, integration and integration with the cloud, integration with other services, integration with security products. It can be done one-off, but use of open APIs to do that makes it easier, makes it faster, and it puts the power in the hands of customers as well as vendors to make services run cross-cloud. Integration with orchestration and automation tools. I made a reference to that. I made a little bit of reference to that earlier, but the virtualization platform providers, VMware, for instance, they've put a lot of time and effort into orchestration tools such as vRealize. So has Microsoft. So has Red Hat. If DDI services can be run from within that tool, these automation tools, you in fact achieve real efficiencies, both in deployment as well as in management. And then finally, again, and we'll always be talking about this subject, is security. When you run across clouds, you open yourself up to more security breaches. The attack surfaces increase, and DDI for cloud has to address that. So now let me go back to my favorite icon diagram, cloud integration. Here you see, again, our little logical representation of DDI running in a grid. And at stage 1 or part 1 of cloud integration, DDI services can be deployed, again, using hardware appliances, as these icons sort of suggest, or they can be run as virtual appliances. And they can be mounted and they can be deployed within the cloud. So you note here from our grid master, you can see a connection to a cloud orchestration, tool that might be VMware, might be OpenStack, might be Hyper-V. In the case of Infoblox DDI, we can be managed through these orchestration tools from, again, Red Hat's OpenStack, VMware, BEA, CA, Cisco's tools, as well as Ansible's automation tool. So now, where does that go in the following step? I've added here AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, the three of the most popular public clouds that can be used today. The service DDI can be deployed in that cloud as well as within the public cloud. From this, you get one pane of glass. If you need to, if you want to, and as you should, monitor performance of your DDI services across all your clouds, you can do that from one spot. We have the ability to automate the discovery of devices any attached device and have visibility into what they're doing, understand what they're connected to, understand their DHCP fingerprint. As I alluded to earlier, we can automate the configuration, provisioning, management of all network services. This is kind of top-down, one-spot management. And you can have consistent network policies from your private cloud to your hybrid cloud to your multi-cloud. Now, when you talk about security, you always get a complicated diagram. So there's other than making this extremely segmented, I did have to crowd a lot of details into this slide. So I appreciate your kind of bearing with me on this one. So you may have to put on your readers like I just did, but the nature of cloud DDI services in the cloud is that you need to have a multi-dimensioned or multi-pronged threat detection. There are a lot of elements to security. You can see over here. You might be able to read it over here on the right-hand side, but intrusion protection, firewalls, SIM services, vulnerability scanners, networks access control. All of this has to be wrapped into a DDI-based solution. The intelligence has to go, this security intelligence has to be distributed throughout the infrastructure. And we're able to do that. Infoblox, our DDI solution, we have integrations with right now over 30 security, other security solutions. I won't attempt to name them all because I just can't remember 30 something vendors, but for instance, a vulnerability scanner. What we might do with a vulnerability scanner is we will notice when a device is attached to a network. We will see the device that is assigned the DNS record. It is assigned an IP address, and we will note that something new has come onto a network. That information can be passed to a vulnerability scanner, and the vulnerability scanner can then take action and make sure that that device is in fact clean and not a threat. These are the kind of things we do. And this is best practice. We also add tools that specifically investigate threats. And we try to be deployment agnostic and vendor agnostic in protecting the network using DNS as the control point, the point of control for intrusions, data exfiltration, and similar threats. So let me talk now about NIOS and what it is and what we're doing. I mentioned what it is. It is our operating system, and it is again the heart of enterprise-grade DDI. How do we approach it? Strategically, it's actually kind of simple. We continuously invest in NIOS. This is not something we. This is not a great body of software we release once a year and kind of just put some stuff in there and hope everything is good. We are constantly applying time, talent, and money, responding to customer requests, and making it the best DDI solution possible. Our goal really is to give the customer everything they need and a little bit more. So what do? We walk the fine line between addressing emerging needs while answering customer requests. So sometimes we add features and functions to NIOS that are direct response to customer, and sometimes we're ahead of the game, trying to anticipate future needs. It's really what we have to do. And ultimately, what we're trying to deliver in NIOS is a network that's capable or more capable, more efficient, and more secure. That's kind of our bottom line. And from on a technical side, and on the commercial side, we also offer flexible licensing options. The market is telling us that we need to do this, that we need to offer choices. So NIOS can be licensed perpetually. It can be licensed on a subscription basis for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, what have you. We make NIOS available in a way that makes the most commercial sense to most organizations. Most recently, we announced NIOS 8.4. I went back and tried to count the number of releases that we've had of NIOS in the last 7 years, and I stopped at about 12. And well, that's where we are. So 8.4, which was released in March, we had four themes, and I'll go into a little bit of detail, but not every bit. But the four themes were cloud readiness, that is adding features to NIOS that makes it more suitable to evolving cloud applications, more security for the system, because that's what customers have been asking for. This is a specific response to customer demand. Expanded visibility to the network infrastructure, and then a number of direct responses to very specific customer requests. So cloud readiness and automation, what does that mean? Well, very specifically, it means we've added Google Cloud support to NIOS. We already had support for AWS and Microsoft Azure, so now we've got a complement. We now have three cloud platforms that we support. What does this particular integration do? It lets you have in DNS as well as DHCP running both on-premises here, represented with this little diagram of here with the device with the crown on top, as your on-premises data center, and you can now deploy Infoblox DDI within. This represents a region of Google Cloud Platform. VPC is Virtual Private Cloud, where you can be running our services in perhaps one region here, or one data center, or another region here, another data center, but it's all one unified DDI service. So as this sub-bullet says, it's integrating on-premises Infoblox Grid and on-premises DDI, and you have consistency of DNS and DHCP, as well as fault tolerance across those platforms. And yes, it will automate all allocation of IP addresses and DNS records. So you're not having to do it once for your private cloud or once for a Google Cloud Platform. And by the way, by extension, it would automate across the other platforms as well. So if you had a multi-cloud environment where you might be using, let's say in the fullest extent, AWS and Azure and Google Cloud, you would have automated and unified allocation of IP and DNS across all those clouds. So why is this valuable? Why do you care? The most obvious one is you can quickly provision, deprovision resources, virtual machines, services, platforms, and because it's unified, there'll be fewer errors. And it gives you more choice among cloud providers. The network and network services should not limit or determine what cloud provider you choose. So as the world is moving towards other cloud providers, we will bring our services there, and that's what we did with Google Cloud Platform support. System security. This is I guess what you would call a small but interesting enhancement to NIOS. We have added support for SAML, that's the Security Markup Language 2.0, into NIOS. So you can integrate our DDI services through NIOS with an SSO service, a single sign-on service, that is. So what does that mean? That means the process of signing into Infoblox DDI or NIOS can now be handled by an SSO provider. So people who fit the bill are not limited to, but they include vendors such as Okta and products such as Azure SSO, and you can see a few others. And what this means is that if a customer chooses not to use NIOS's native logon and password features, they can in fact delegate this entire process to an SSO provider. And then when a user just signs into their corporate network, their profile can be adjusted, and Infoblox NIOS can be one of the services they immediately have access to. So that reduces logon prompts, logon attempts, reduces support calls to the or calls to your support desk asking for help because they lost because people have lost their logons or forgotten their passwords. And it also enables two-factor authentication, which is something we happen to do at Infoblox. So it is, for lack of a better term, slicker security for NIOS. Infrastructure visibility. This is a growing field of interest amongst a number of our customers. And that field of interest is they would like to use DNS and DHCP as the lens by which they see devices on their network. So one of the particular areas they wanted better visibility to was VLANs, virtual LANs. Why? The use of virtual LANs is growing. It's growing because virtual LANs are just a great way to segment the network, make efficient use of ports, make efficient use of switch capacity, and keep people from going where they shouldn't be going. And seeing that from the lens of DNS and IP addresses is a very clear and very unique way to look at all of the VLANs, especially if an organization uses different switches, or switches from different vendors, I should say. So anyway, the nature of our VLAN management is simply that we discover and validate all VLAN configurations within the network. So you can look at and manage VLANs, what's assigned, what's being used, what's not being used, what's being underused. We have the ability to look at all VLANs, see the range of devices, and manage objects that are assigned that are assigned to a VLAN. And we have a discovery engine that displays discrepancies or errors or inconsistencies between VLANs. So whereas you might assign certain resources to a VLAN, we will discover that they're not being used, or vice versa if things are on a VLAN that shouldn't be. It's a very, very useful exception reporting tool. Why is it valuable? Why should you care? Well, it's going to optimize and validate the use of your VLAN resources. And now last, just responding to customers, to kind of give you just the order of magnitude here. We have, in addition to the features that I just described, we have over 40 specific enhancements that were suggested by over 200 customers. Some of the features are quite minor, some of the features are less minor, but the point is, customers do talk. Customers lead us to where we need to go, and it only makes sense that we listen. Among those enhancements, though, again, I'm not going to go into all 40, but we did make some major improvements to the user interface, just giving it a much better look and feel. We actually, in addition to our single sign-on support, we enriched the native password account management functions. Just made it better in terms of how you would assign and manage NIOS users by doing things that are getting rid of old passwords, disabling users, locking out people who are failing or are using bad passwords. And then we updated some of the native technologies such as OpenSSH, as well as adding HSTS support, both of which improve security. But again, the nature of what we do here is respond to customers, make the product better, and then ask again, what can we do to improve what we do? So summary, bottom line, if you will, DDI. They are vital to a network. They're vital to the organization. And enterprise-grade DDI, what's it about? It's about security. It's about connectivity, flexibility, as well as integration, especially in the cloud. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Kyle, who will take us to the next step.
Yeah, thanks, David. We've had a number of questions come in, so let's go ahead and jump right in. So first question, what overlay DDI platforms does Infoblox currently support?
Okay, good question. Overlay platforms, or sometimes thought of as overlay networks. Here again, this is where we go where customers lead us. And most commonly, the overlay network or the overlay DDI platform that we deal with is Windows Server. So, and there are good reasons for that. Windows Server is a fine tool, and it comes with it comes with Windows. Windows Server DDI can be integrated into our DDI solution, and it can be managed from one control point. So that's what we do today, and as the market requires us, we will go elsewhere.
Thanks. And if anyone does have any questions, again, you can submit those via the Q&A tab. We have a few more questions on the list at this point. So David, earlier in the presentation, you mentioned flexible licensing options. What are those options exactly?
Well, the old standby is a perpetual license. You buy our software, you own it forever. You get a support agreement, and the support agreement gets you access to all updates and all new features. In addition to that, we offer a subscription license. A subscription license can be of a number of durations, from 1 year to 5. The nice thing about subscription licenses is they cost less because they're subscriptions. They're paid on an annual basis, and they include maintenance. So you don't have to have an additional maintenance contract to get all the features. So licensing by subscription, again, choice of term, lower cost, and includes maintenance.
Okay, perfect. A couple more questions we have. So how does single sign-on support relate to traditional user IDs and passwords? Do you see that as really kind of redundant?
Not so much redundant. It's an either-or situation. Single sign-on support does not replace the native user ID management, but it gives a customer the option to bypass that and just let the single sign-on service handle it like it would handle access to any other application. Again, I'll use Infoblox as an example. We use a single sign-on service, and I'm able to sign in, and my profile allows me access to about 14 or 15 different applications that we use within the company. Things like Salesforce.com and a few others come to mind. Now, NIOS can be added to that. So I would sign on one time, get access to everything that my IT department has allowed me to get access to, and I do not have to now put in a user ID and a password to get access to NIOS. Now, obviously, you would restrict this to people who would only want to, you would restrict this to network administrators and network architects and designers, and only the people that would need to manage EDI would have access to this. But it's an efficiency feature. It's an efficiency feature that's there for a user who wants it.
Okay, great answer there. So moving on, does the Infoblox VLAN management differ from the administration tools that are currently in an Ethernet switch?
It does, because it is based on the IP and DNS, well, IP primarily, information we collect. The admin tools that come from switch vendors are pretty much what you get from the switch vendor. So, and they are by necessity designed for those switches. Pick your switch vendor of choice. There are many. They all have good tools, but they all have good tools for their own switches. Our VLAN management sees VLAN traffic and sees VLAN information across any switch, any vendor. So if you want to coin a term, a pan VLAN management tool or a pan VLAN visibility tool, that is what we provide. So that would be the difference. And by the way, it's not an add-on feature to NIOS. It is simply an embedded feature in NIOS 8.4.
Okay, thanks, David. That looks to be about all the time we have today. I want to thank everyone for joining today's webinar, Modernize Network Services and Expand Hybrid Cloud Options, presented by Infoblox. Again, our presenter today was David Vineski, Product Marketing Manager at Infoblox. Thank you, David.